Hi guys, and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron, and welcome back today to another video. There has been some news that has broken over the last couple of hours that I thought was worth sitting down and talking about. We briefly mentioned it in the live game review to Everton's 3-1 defeat to Crystal Palace, but I thought we'd talk about it in a little bit more detail and as a separate video of its own today, because it is quite big news and certainly news that we didn't want to hear coming into what is a really, really difficult game on Thursday against Chelsea. Everton have released a statement today stating that Richarlison was forced off early in the second half at Selhurst Park, and a subsequent scan has revealed the Brazilian has suffered a tear in his calf. The 24-year-old, who has 3 league goals this season, is expected to be sidelined for a number of weeks. The club have also confirmed that Townsend sustained a small fracture in his foot following a challenge with an opposing player in the game against Crystal Palace, and the club have said that Townsend's condition will be reviewed by specialists later this week after an x-ray diagnosed the problem. And Coleman has suffered bone bruising and soft tissue damage in the meeting against Crystal Palace as well. Seamus will also be assessed over the coming days. So Rafa Benitez's Everton side, who have won 2 games in the space of 2 months in a really, really treacherous run of awful form at the moment, with some horrendously difficult fixtures coming up over the next week or so. We've got Chelsea on Thursday, we've got Leicester at the weekend, we've got a couple of really difficult fixtures coming up after Christmas as well. Burnley on Boxing Day isn't an easy fixture by any sense of the imagination. We're now struck with even more injuries to add to the injuries that we've already got. Let's not forget Dominic Calvert-Lewin is still out injured and has been for the last 3 months. Alam was unavailable for the game against Crystal Palace. I'm sure we'll find out over the next coming days whether or not that problem is something that is going to keep him out for a longer period of time, or whether or not it was just a one-game issue. Let's hope that it is the latter and it's not something that's going to keep him out for a sustained period of time. We know Yerry Mina, of course, come back against Arsenal after a long period on the sidelines and lasted 13 minutes and then had to go off again, and I'm sure Yerry Mina will probably be out for quite some time as well. And the absolute last thing we needed at the moment, in the form that we're in, with the injuries that we've already got, with the division surrounding the football club, is more bad news, and that's what we've been given this evening. Richarlison, who is, our biggest goal threat, other than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's only scored 3 league goals this season, but he's been injured before this, and when Richarlison's on the pitch, you're much more likely to score a goal than when he's not on the pitch, and he showed that against Arsenal. Arguably his best performance in an Everton shirt against Arsenal, only a week ago. Scored 3 goals, of course, 2 of them given offside, but the third, he persisted, he kept going, he didn't drop his head, he kept working, he kept going, and we always wanted more. He wasn't great against Crystal Palace, but I do put that down to the system and the tactics that the manager had put out there. They just didn't suit Richarlison whatsoever, and obviously to read that he suffered a tear in his calf and that it could keep him out, or it is expected to keep him out for a number of weeks, is awful news. It really, really is awful news, because let's not forget, about 6 weeks ago we were told by the manager that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is only a couple of weeks away, and this was after he'd suffered a knockback with his injury, and we keep hearing from Rafa Benitez saying Dominic's getting closer, only a couple of weeks away. But this couple of weeks has almost been the longest couple of weeks I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. It's going on and on and on. Now, we haven't seen Dominic Calvert-Lewin since the game against Leeds, I believe, the second game, Brighton, the third game of the season. He's been missing since then. So, and that was late August, early September. So, being without Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been a massive, massive blow, and we've seen the effects that has had on the squad. The reliance on Solomon Rondon, who isn't great and certainly isn't at the level Dominic Calvert-Lewin is at. But we've always had, other than for a brief spell here and there, we've had Richarlison to sort of look at and go, right, you've got to step up now. And he's played up front and he's played on the wings, etc. And now obviously hearing he's got a tear in his calf and he's going to be out for a number of weeks is just an absolute massive blow. We done the live stream earlier on today for the game review of the Palace game, as I mentioned before, and somebody commented, and I thought it was a really apt and spot on comment, and it was something along the lines of, with Everton, you're never really at rock bottom, because when you feel you're at rock bottom, it will always get worse, and that's where I was this afternoon when I read that news. I thought it couldn't get much worse than being in a potential relegation battle at Christmas, winning 2 games in 2 months, losing to sides that we shouldn't be losing to, putting in performances that are just absolutely disgraceful, manager, making awful tactical decisions and having pretty much the entire fan base against them, owners not communicating with the club and communicating with their mates instead, fans obviously with massive issues towards the board, and rightly so, board, changes going on left, right and centre with no real structure or plan or vision. And, we were sort of sitting there thinking, can it get much worse for us Evertonians? And then here we go, another, key player who's picked up an injury, and not just an injury that's going to keep him out for 1 game or 2 games, an injury that could keep him out until, January, maybe February time, if it's worse, if it's as worse as first feared, and we simply, we can't go that long without Richarlison. It's as simple as that. With Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison both out, I don't know how Everton are going to cope. I really don't. We've got Chelsea on Thursday, which is pretty much a write-off. I'm never typically negative. I'm never typically pessimistic. I'm always trying to look for positives, but I just don't see a world in which Everton get anything out of that game on Thursday, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. And I'm sort of just counting down the days as to when Dominic Calvert-Lewin will return to fitness, because listen, whether you think Richarlison's had a good start to the season or not, what we saw against Arsenal on Monday was what Richarlison can bring if he's played in the right position, if he played to his strengths, and how good he can be on his day, and taking that away for a number of weeks, and almost knowing now that we're going to be even more reliant on Solomon Rondon, who, okay, come on and scored his first goal against Palace, but let's be honest, isn't ready or shouldn't be starting games of football for Everton in the Premier League. And you add that to the fact that we're already in an awful run of form and dangerously close to the relegation zone. It's just absolutely dreadful news. Obviously, we wish Richie the very best in his recovery. Knowing Richarlison as a player and the person that he is, this will be absolutely killing him. We saw obviously his look on his face when he was substituted, and a lot of people give a lot of stick to Rafa Benitez for substituting Richarlison on Sunday, and obviously in hindsight you can look back on it and say he was injured. What I would still say is why he was kept on over half time, if they knew there was a problem, or if Rafa Benitez had an idea there was an issue, why would he allow him to go out in the second half for 10 minutes? Why not just take him off at half time, and then we could have at least all sat here and said he's clearly injured. But other people would say, well, listen, Cam, look at it the other way. If he'd have left them on and done what a lot of Evertonians would have wanted, then it could have the injury could have gotten a lot worse. So it is what it is, I suppose. I'm sort of getting beyond the point now with Everton and with injuries of sort of focusing on luck. I done a video a couple of months ago when Abdoulaye Doucouré picked up an injury in the game in a game of football. He broke his foot in the game, or fractured his foot, as what Andros Townsend has done. I can't remember what game it was. And I done a video talking about Everton being the unluckiest team in the world in regards to injuries, and is there another side that are as unlucky as Everton? And I still sort of believe and agree with that, and I still sort of follow that thought process. But I'm also starting to look a little bit deeper into it and starting to think, is there a wider issue here? How long can we keep blaming luck in regards to our injury problems? Are the players having MMA style fights at USM Finch Farm? Are the fitness team just simply not good enough and not spotting these problems? Rafa Benitez spoke a couple of weeks ago about protecting players, but he clearly put Yerry Mina on against Arsenal when he was nowhere near ready to play. It's not like Yerry Mina had an impact injury against Arsenal, or was in a physical battle. He didn't really have to do anything for the 13 minutes that he was on the pitch, 14 minutes that he was on the pitch. Made a couple of runs, passed the ball a couple of times, and then he pulled up with an injury. So he clearly wasn't ready to play. So why was he playing? As I said, obviously there's a massive chunk of awful luck that goes with it, but the injuries that we're getting, fractures to feet, I don't know. I'm not a medical specialist. I'm not somebody that can honestly sit here and say these things can be avoided, and sit here and say that there's there's certain things that can be put in place to avoid these things. But it does almost seem like the amount of injuries that Everton have and the amount of injuries Everton have to key players, it seems very coincidental for it to just be bad luck. You know, I almost look at, as I said, the medical team, the coaches, the training, you know, what's going on behind the scenes, and think, are these players being worked too hard? You know, that would explain why they can't press for more than 35 seconds in a game of football. Are they just not fit enough? Are they not resting enough? What's going on? What's the regime behind this? Because, you know, as I said, I get we can all sit here and say, well, it's just luck. We're just the unluckiest team in the world. We have so much bad luck. But, you know, we're looking at this season now, and we're only, a couple of months in, and you've had Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's been out for 3 months and is still out. Richarlison, who'll now be out for a couple of months. You know, obviously we had Decore out for 9 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that. And just Townsend will be out for, I'm sure, a similar time, because it's a similar injury as what's gauged. Seamus Coleman's been out. You know, we've had Jordan Pickford out at times. You know, Yerry Mina. How many of these key injuries to key players do we have to have before we sit down and think, is there anything we can do to avoid this? You know, because I've addressed this problem before, and I think it's a massive problem, and I spoke about it earlier today, and I likened Everton to Manchester City and Liverpool. I didn't liken them to them. I sort of said, why can't Everton be like Manchester City and Liverpool? And a lot of people in the comments said, don't be stupid, Cam. They're two teams with much better players than Everton. They've got a much better squad. They're like years away. I'm not talking about the quality of the player. I'm talking about, if you look at Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, there's one thing that these teams have got in common. Yes, they've got, you know, fantastic players. Yes, their players are much better than anybody else's. Yes, they've got brilliant managers and tacticians, etc. But they all work harder than anybody else. I've just watched Manchester City beat Leeds 7-0 today. 7-0 they beat Leeds. And you know, when they were 5-0 up, 6-0 up, they were still pressing high up the pitch. They weren't giving Leeds players a minute to think. And that's why these teams like Liverpool, City, Chelsea, that's why they score 5, 6, 4, 7, 8 goals. That's why they're constantly scoring, because when they go 2-0 up, they don't sit back and go, do you know what, that's it. Now, they continue pressing. And I said it before, there's a lot of teams in this league that if you press them high and you force them into making a quick decision and you give them something to think about, they will make mistakes, and those mistakes will be able to formulate themselves into chances for Everton if you do that. But Everton don't do that. Everton sit off teams and almost say, have 3 weeks to decide which pass you're going to play. Have 10 minutes to decide what run you're going to make. You know, I'm not going to put any pressure on you, so you can sit there and no player is going to make a mistake when he's under no pressure whatsoever. It takes a really bad footballer, the type that you won't see in the Premier League, to make a mistake when they're under no pressure whatsoever. Everton don't put teams under pressure. As I said, if there's one thing that those 3 teams do better than anybody else, it's they work harder than everybody else. They're constantly on opposition players' toes. They're constantly forcing people into making mistakes. They're constantly, you know, at players' feet within seconds of them receiving the ball. And you can talk about the quality of the players those teams have. You can talk about the quality of the manager, but it's simple. Those teams work harder than Everton. And, you know, for me, we can sit here all we like and say we haven't got, you know, a better manager than City or Liverpool, or we haven't got better players, but there's no excuse for our players to not be working as hard as their players. There's three factors of it. They're either not fit enough to do so, they don't want to do it, or the manager is restricting them from doing it. Pressing high, working hard. Because that's what the City and Manchester City, Chelsea and Liverpool do. They're not just the best teams in the league, they're the hardest working teams in the league. And that's why they're constantly winning games 6-7, 0. Yes, the quality of their players massively helps that, but their work rate is impeccable. And there's no excuse for Everton's work rate to not be impeccable. There's no excuse for these players to not be pressing high, getting at players. And it sort of leads into the same question, is that we're picking up ridiculous amount of injuries constantly, and players are coming into games and not being able to run around for 90 minutes. We have bursts of a minute or 5 minutes here and there, but we can't do it consistently. What's going on? Are they being overworked? Are they being overtrained? Is there not enough time for recovery? I don't know. As I said, I'm not a medical expert. I'm not a football fitness expert. Otherwise, I'd be getting paid an awful lot more money than what I am, and I'd probably be employed by Everton. But I'm not, so I don't know the answers to it. But I'm starting to get this overall feeling now of it goes beyond luck. But ultimately, look, the situation is what it is, and Richarlison is now set to be sidelined for a number of weeks with a tear to his calf. So yeah, as I said, wishing Richarlison the very best in his recovery, and hopefully he can get himself recovered and ready to get back into the squad as soon as possible, because we need him. Really, we need him. Andros Townsend has suffered a small fracture in his foot. The club haven't put a time frame on the injury and said that he still is needing to see specialists later this week, and obviously after having a X-ray that's diagnosed it. But given that it's a small fracture in his foot, which was sustained during a game, again, similar to Abdoulaye Doucouré's, I'm sort of using Abdoulaye Doucouré's injury as a reference point as to how long Andros Townsend will be out for. Doucouré was out for 6, 7, 8 weeks, something like that. So it means we'll be without Andros Townsend for that period of time as well. Maybe it'll be a little bit less, maybe it'll be a little bit more, but it'll be somewhere around that time frame, I would assume, obviously depending on the severity of it. Again, not what we needed. Listen, I don't think Andros Townsend's been particularly great recently. I think he had a really good start to the season. He had a really lively start to the season. And I think he's one of those players that will always give 100%, will always work hard, will always battle, will always show that desire and that commitment, even if he isn't playing particularly well. But he hasn't been playing particularly well recently. That's the fact of the matter. But again, given the situation that Everton are currently in, with form, with fixtures coming up, with the with the situation with the manager, with the board, with all the injuries that we've already got, and the complete lack of any sort of depth in the squad, we really didn't need a starting player to pick up an injury that's going to keep him out for again multiple weeks, maybe even months. It just wasn't needed. We can only think now that we'll see a lot more of Anthony Gordon, probably a lot more of Alex Iwobi, and probably a lot more of Solomon Rondon. But the reality of the situation is those three players don't bring as much to the team as what Richarlison and Andros Townsend bring. And at the moment, Richarlison and Andros Townsend aren't bringing an awful lot. Hence the past however many results. Arsenal, I've forgot about. It doesn't even matter. It's a nonsense. It may as well not have happened. And this is a big worry. Big worry. Same thing goes. Obviously, we wishing Andros the very best of luck with his recovery, and we hope to see him on the pitch soon. Seamus Coleman's doesn't seem too bad, at least not as bad. He suffered bone bruising and soft tissue damage, and he'll be continued to be assessed. Maybe he'll miss the game against Chelsea, but I would hope that he'd be fit for the game against Leicester at the weekend. But Rafa Benitez has now got some serious decisions to make, and for me, he's got one massive decision that involves a French left back that you can see behind me, in which he needs to ultimately act like an adult and sort out whatever problems he has with said French left back, because ultimately Lucas Digne is fit. He hasn't picked up an injury. He's completely fit and available to be playing. He's not playing because of an issue that he has with the manager, or an issue that the manager has with whatever it is. At the end of the day, we're likely to be without Seamus Coleman on on Thursday, which means that Ben Godfrey is likely to, going to have to go over at right back. We already haven't got enough centre back, so it'll have to be Michael Keane and Mason Holgate as a centre back partnership, which I'm dreading drastically, because I think Chelsea could put about 12 past them two, but there you go. And that means obviously Lucas Digne will have to come in at left back. There's no room for stubbornness. There's no space for stupid personal disagreements or arguments. Rafa Benitez has to do what's best for Everton Football Club, and at the moment, given the injury to Seamus Coleman, the best for Everton Football Club is for Lucas Digne to be back in that team. Whether he's played well recently or not, whether Ben Godfrey has played well recently or not, the fact of the matter is, if Lucas Digne didn't have an issue with Rafa Benitez, he'd be in this team. So he should be in there, in my opinion. But yeah, there you go. As I said earlier, just when you think it can't get much worse for Everton Football Club, another couple of key players pick up serious injuries that are likely to keep them out for a number of weeks. Really gutted. As you can tell, you're probably thinking you seem a bit expressionless, Cam. I'm bored of Everton. I really, really am bored of Everton. We've spoken a million times about the issues with the board, lack of communication, no real plan or drive or sort of, I suppose, plan for where the club is going. We've spoken about the manager. For me, he shouldn't be in a job at the moment. He simply shouldn't. We've spoken on numerous occasions about the players and do they care as much as they should do? Are they good enough? Are they as good as they should be? Probably a mix of both. We've already had our ridiculously fair share of injuries before this statement was released, and now we're talking about a further 2 or 3 key injuries to key players within the squad who we really, really could do with during a really, really busy period. And honestly, I just wonder. I am in a position at the moment where, I'm not quite at that we're going to get relegated situation, but I don't see the way out of this. That's where I'm at, I suppose. And that's not me saying I don't see the way out of not being relegated, but I don't see how Everton, I don't see where the next 6 points are coming from. We might get the odd win here and there, but can we string 2 wins together? Evidently, over the last couple of months, we can't. A perfect opportunity would have been to do that on Sunday. We beat Arsenal a week before, coming up against an average Crystal Palace team, and we were absolutely embarrassed. We're continuing to have big injuries to key players, which means squad players are having to step in, and we know that these squad players aren't anywhere near good enough and, don't bring anything to the squad whatsoever. So, for me, it's really, really going to take... It's either going to take Dominic Calvert-Lewin being back fit ASAP, and by ASAP I mean before Burnley on Boxing Day, or somebody stepping up and being a hero. And that might be Anthony Gordon, that might be Solomon Rondon, that might be Damari Gray, who's almost sort of there already, that might be Alex Iwobi, that might be Abdoulaye Doucouré, I don't know. But I just, other than those 2 scenarios, i.e. Dominic Calvert-Lewin returning to fitness and somebody stepping up and being a hero, I don't really know how we get out of this situation. And we could be staring down the battle of relegation come the January transfer window opening, which means that the club will have to do serious business in January, and I'm not convinced the club will be able to do serious business in January. A, because I don't trust the people that are responsible for doing that business to make the right decisions, and B, because teams will understand the situation Everton are in and will add a tax onto whatever player we are after, and it'll probably be a tax that we simply can't afford because of financial problems. So I don't know where we go from here. I really, really don't. What I do know is we've got a game of footy on Thursday against Chelsea. The live game preview, by the way, will be up tomorrow evening, so look out for that one. We'll be going live and talking about that game in all of its not glory. But, as I said, I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. But that is the latest. Richarlison has picked up a tear, suffered a tear in his calf, and is likely to be out for a number of weeks. And Townsend has suffered a small fracture in his foot following a challenge, and his condition will be reviewed by specialists later this week. He has already had an x-ray which has diagnosed the problem, and Seamus Coleman has suffered bone bruising and soft tissue damage again in the game against Palace, and he will be assessed over the next coming days as well. So there you go. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this one, please do hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a massive amount to me. As I said, we'll be live tomorrow with the game preview to the Chelsea game, so don't forget to look out for that one. Massive thank you for watching. One thing I do want to say before we go is, even though it's very, very grim and bleak at the moment to be an Evertonian and things aren't going well, and trust me, I know as well as anybody else, I'm very much, even me, doing the channel, I'm very much in a position at the moment where a lot of days I wake up and think, I don't even want to think about Everton because it doesn't bring me any joy or excitement at the moment. It's just pure negative emotion, and I don't want that. But I still do because it's Everton and I love the club, and obviously we've got the channel and stuff. So I just want to say a massive thank you for all of the continued support, the likes, the subscriptions, the views, the shares, the comments, everything. It means a massive amount to me, because I know how easy it is at the moment to just sort of say, I'm not bothering watching anything to do with Everton, and I'm not bothering watching Everton because they don't bring any joy to life at the minute. So I just want to say, every person that takes time out the day to watch, like, subscribe, comment, all of that sort of stuff means an absolute massive amount to me, because the club don't care if this channel does well. or if, you know, people are liking these videos or commenting or getting involved in the live stream. The club don't give a fuck about that, but I really do. So I want to come out and thank, you know, thank you all for that. Seeing as the club don't seem to thank fans, you know, away fans or home fans when we don't win, they only really seem to do it when we win, which is a bit mad. But you know, as I said, thank you all so much for the support. It does mean a massive amount to me. Anyway, big thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you soon on the Mighty Blues.